Hey everybody, welcome to the Adventist Hoops podcast. If you're watching, you can tell this is a different kind of episode because it's in person. I'm here with our interview subject, which today is Kenny Johnston. Kenny, welcome to the Adventist Hoops podcast.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you. Appreciate it.
So I'm in person because Kenny is the athletic director and girls head coach at Sacramento Adventist Academy, which is also where I live and where I coach. So I hope I do not upset him because he's my AD and I want to stay in good standing with him. But that's why we're doing it in person. And Kenny, I'm glad that you're finally able to come on here because truly, and I've tried to withhold on doing too much Sacramento Adventist Academy. I don't want to be accused of being a homer, but 20 episodes in now, and frankly, one of the best Adventist girls programs in the country, I think warrants a conversation with you. Before we get there, where are you from? I can tell everybody you're from Sacramento. Yeah. You went here. And what was your journey in basketball growing up and then through college? When did you realize, hey, I want to be a coach?
Okay, so I actually grew up in Sacramento, California, and I attended Sacramento Adventist Academy. I graduated in 2010, just a few years after you, but graduated
more than a few.
Yeah, more than. But I do remember playing all the way through high school and played varsity here, of course, and was lucky enough to have a couple college looks and tryouts. Did not make any of those teams, which at that moment it was very soul-crushing for me. But looking back now, I still realize that it kind of paved the path for where I am currently. So after that, I just stayed involved with the athletic department at Wall University. Worked under Tim Windemith for a few years, and then I worked also under Don Hepker and Jerry Larson for a little bit. So kind of back and forth, and stayed just connected through the SID aspect of athletics and running intramurals.
And that was all as a student?
Just as a student, yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You said that all those experiences kind of helped lead you to your work that you would do in the future.
Yeah.
Maybe even the setbacks. In what way?
I think playing basketball was such a big part of my life early on, and then when I was not able to make a college team, and it stops. There's a moment where, and it comes in every athlete's life, where it's done, it's over. And so then you have to make a decision, are you going to drop it, or are you going to keep this thing that you've devoted so many hours to in your life and convert it into something that you can use positively? And so for me, not being able to play at college was a big bummer for me. I really wanted to play, but for whatever reason, didn't have it, wasn't good enough, didn't have the right looks. Doesn't really matter, just didn't work out. But that led me into getting very involved with the athletic department, the other side of it, more the administrative side of it, and working through that way. So I worked for Wawa's athletic department area for 4 of the 5 years I was at Wawa University.
And you were an exercise science major or whatever they...
No. Actually, no. Okay. I have no, not at all. I was entering Wawa. I was actually forensic psychology, which was pretty cool. But then I decided to be a student missionary. And then as a student missionary, I spent my year in Pohnpei, Micronesia. And that was my first time I served as a quote-unquote athletic director. Was on the island of Micronesia or island of Pohnpei in Micronesia. And then that kind of gave me the itch, hey, maybe I could teach. So I came back and declared history as my major, actually. I got my secondary ed cert and still worked for the athletic department, so I was still very involved there. And then eventually graduated, got hired at Palisades Christian Academy up in Spokane, and worked there for 2 years, and then got a call to come down for an open spot here at Sacramento Adventist, and I took it. So,
what was it like coaching in Micronesia?
Coaching in Micronesia is completely different. It's a different game. Not so much the goal of the game is the same, but the style of the game is different. The players are different, how they've grown, and the rules, because it's FIBA rules. So there are things where you'll get certain fouls that are allowed, or certain defenses, or different things that are allowed that are not at the other levels. In FIBA play, you can take the ball off the rim. So we had a couple high schoolers, the ball is up there, where here it's goaltending, right? But there they were, we'd have drills where we practice taking the ball off the rim and things like this, because it's part of the game. And so that was part of it. A lot of speed, a lot of just, it's very, I would say it's like a fast break game. It's control chaos, but it's great. It's fun.
Tell us the story of getting your team or teams to the Walla Walla tournament.
Oh, that was, okay, so that was like, 2000, man, you're testing me here, Dustin. I'd say 2014, 2015, somewhere around there maybe. But basically I came back to Walla University, and then I went back to the island, Pohnpei, to just visit some of my students during a Christmas break. And visiting there, and then it happened to be during their big Christmas tournament, which is kind of like their big tournament in the season. And so watched them play, and I got to assistant coach on a couple of them. It was kind of fun. They ended up doing really well. Both tournaments, girls won the tournament that year. Boys, I think, came in second or third. And coaches who are also student missionaries at the time were sitting there and just talking. They're like, oh, wouldn't it be so great to take them to the academy tournament? It just happened to be a bunch of Walla Walla student missionaries. And they were like, oh, Walla Walla's tournament would be so fun. It's like, yeah, it would. And then I think one of us, we're just like, well, why not? Like, let's make a call, see what happens. So we called up the tournament director, Don Hepker, actually, and said, hey, we have this kind of like crazy idea. What do you think? He goes, yeah, like, go for it. And so we went through there, and then recruitment, Trevor Congleton was huge. He's still there at Walla University, massive in working it all out. And we got some very generous donors and things like that, and they came over. But it's definitely like, we all know it had nothing really to do with us, and like, it sounds cliche, but we're just really the instrument that God used to make that happen for those kids. And it was really special because I think of those teams, I think there was about 30 kids that came over. I want to say 4 or 5 ended up attending Walla University in some aspect. And so it was pretty special to see that.
Well, and just for them to be able to experience a new culture, the travel, I mean, for a lot of teams in these regional Adventist College Academy tournaments, it's just the thing they do every year. But I'm sure for them it was a completely different experience, and probably one that sounds like changed some of their lives to the point where they decided to attend.
Yeah, and it kind of set a precedence for that school up there. And then the following year, the boys ended up going to the Union tournament. I wasn't as involved with that one because I was still at Walla finishing up my student teaching. But they went to the Union tournament. I think the girls went as well. So like, it was one of those things like, why not? It's just, cost of it and everything for travel. So it's really tough. Yeah. And because like that stuff, our schools here, in the United States, we struggle with, but it's also there too. It's almost heightened because that's a long flight from Micronesia over to Walla, Washington.
I haven't talked a lot about Sacramento Adventist Academy and the basketball tradition here. This is my one chance, since I'm talking to the AD and former alumnus. Like, I'm not going to talk about it myself a lot, but I feel like we do have a pretty strong and proud basketball tradition that goes back decades. I mean, what is your perspective on that as an SAA alumnus? I
may be a little biased since I coach basketball, and basketball is my love, but as far as I can remember, like, SAA has been a basketball school. It's kind of the sport that has thrived here through all the years prior to CIF involvement, then joining the CIF through coaches and everything. Basketball has kind of been that staple, and very much so on the boys' side for years. And then kind of our girls' side now has started to gain that as well. It's becoming very popular for both our boys and girls on this side. But CIF for us started in 2001, 2002. I believe you were part of the team that first played in the CIF, so that's pretty special, like full-fledged CIF members, league members. That was under Coach Stuart Bushnell, of course, the legendary coach here.
Hall of Famer.
Hall of Famer coach, no doubt. He's going to hate that if he sees it. But either way, like, he really ushered us into the CIF, kind of opened the door. And I give him pretty much most of the credit for seeing what this school could do in the CIF and just saying, hey, this is advantageous for us. We could be doing all these smaller things forever and just continue doing that, or we can push ourselves and take a step out. And he did that, and it wasn't easy in the many conversations I had with him. A lot of tough decisions, tough conversations, a lot of criticism, but he kind of stuck the course. And now we're here 2024, like 20-something years later, and our basketball programs have section championships. We got a NorCal title for the boys, so I would say it's a decision for me. Looking back, it's like it paid off. It paid off for him.
Absolutely, yeah. And you think about some of those early programs, whether you hear about Portland Adventist Academy, Tacoma Academy back in Maryland. Some of these first programs in their areas to take it to the school board and say, hey, we want to compete outside of Adventist, and not just compete outside of Adventist schools, but also participate in the state, athletic association, CIF being California Interscholastic Federation here in California. By the way, since we're on that, can you explain, because California is a large state, and so can you explain the playoff structure for CIF and what it means to win a section versus regionals and the state?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so each section, California is split into many different sections. So here, Sacramento, we're CIF, Sac Joaquin, or SJS. We are the second largest section in the state in school number-wise. So I think right now we have 174 full-fledged members. And they are split up in basketball between divisions 1 and 6. 1 being the largest schools. So your large public schools, they'll be 1. And then 2, 3, 4. So here at SA, we're a very small school, and we are classified at Division 6. So we're Division 6. So once you play throughout your years, you're in leagues. League members qualify for playoffs. You got to finish, depending on your league, you have to finish in a certain position to qualify. And so for us, you got to finish in the top 3 in league in order to qualify for the section playoff. So once you get there, they take all the Division 6 teams who've qualified for section playoffs, put them into a bracket for us, and then we play through a playoff bracket pretty much, one and done, win and go home, however you want to call it. But the final 2 teams at Division 6, they will play for the section title, and so they'll play that game, and then whether you win or lose from there, they will get to move on to NorCals, or what we call regionals, right?
And for other states, the California regionals is kind of like going to state, in a sense.
Yes.
Right, because it's like one level, and then the next level up is there's basically 2 halves of the playoffs, because the actual state round is like smaller.
Yes,
like
the state round is smaller. So like once at Division 6, so there's no Division 6 in D5 D6 in SoCal. That's in Northern California. They made it for us. So we actually get stopped at Northern California regionals. Like you win the NorCal regionals, that's as far as your team can go at D6. But
which our boys did, by the way.
Which our boys did, 2017, 18, I believe.
Which I like to say the state championship.
Well, I mean,
it's not.
It's up for debate. It's up for debate. You could call it a state championship. They did finish number 1 in the rankings for their school. There's no other school their size there, so you can call it a state championship. Some will definitely debate that, of course, because you don't get to play that last game. But that last game is once you reach through the NorCals, if you're in D5 or above, and then once you hit regionals, you get this open division, which is the best of the best, right? Regardless of school size. But once that happens, you play through, and then you'll play the team that's arrived from the South. And so for us, we see that as state. That one game is state. The best from the NorCal versus the best from SoCal.
So it's a little different than other states, for sure. Let's talk about your girls team this last year, 23-24, getting all the way to the section championship game, playing a league opponent that we had lost to a couple times before.
Yes. Yeah.
And talk about briefly just that game and playing a player on the other side that is probably going to play Division I basketball at some point, and how you slowed her down.
So kind of playing through that way, we played Faith Christian out of Yuba City, another small school, Division 6. But they have a player, Lauren Harris, who's just kind of a prolific scorer. And when I say prolific, I mean really prolific. She's one of the better shooters, I think, in the area, especially at girls sports or girls basketball in this spot. But we ended up playing them. They're in our league, so we saw them twice. They beat us twice. I think we lost to them up there at Yuba by 10 or something like that. And they came down here and just laid it on us. Like they beat us good. I think it was 22 points, something like that. But ended up getting to the section final, and there's a thing with this team that was really special at SAA is like they were a team that they really believed they can do it. I remember like walking out of both those games, losses previously to Faith Christian, and our talk was like, no, like we can beat them. We know we can beat them. And so we got that third chance. The cliche, it's always hard to beat a team 3 times. We truly did believe that. We're a team that really hangs ourselves defensively. That's what we believe we do. We tried to allow our defense to travel and to carry us. And so in the section final, that's what we really focused on. We really focused defensively, trying to slow down a score as much as you can. Lauren's kind of one of those scores for us where we discussed like, hey, you're not going to actually stop her. Just make it as difficult as possible. And so that's what we tried to do. We threw a lot of bodies at her. We did a lot of different switching. We tried to give her different looks than she had saw previously against us. And, we had a good offensive showing, and it turned out for us.
I know Coach Johnston here is not going to divulge all the details of his plan against Faith Christian, so I won't even ask. But certainly a high-level defensive strategy at the high school level, absolutely. And these girls, the thing I've been most impressed with them in over the last year is their maturity and their focus, being able to grasp some of these things you're asking them to do, which, the attention to detail in practice on their part, you're teaching it, but they're taking it in. No seniors last year either. No young group that is back this year and ready to try to go even further. So you win the section championship last year. You make it to the Final Four of the regionals. If you look at that way, you're just a couple games away from a state championship. We can't play in a state championship in Division 6, but just one win away from the regional NorCal championship game. How proud of you are you of that team?
Super proud of them. We did something for our girls program here at SA that's never been done. Not only did they advance to a section title, but they won it. We'd been there before previously, like 2 years ago, I think, and we ended up losing to another league opponent in Valley Christian out of Roseville. But we advanced here, and then what was really cool is we got to host some regional games. And so that was the first in girls program history, not just basketball, but SAA girls program history, where we got to host a NorCal regional in any sport. And so it was pretty special to see our community come out. I think we played Point Arena out of the North Coast section, and they came down, and we ended up having a really good game against them. And then we ran into a powerhouse in Fall River, and Fall River has been great for years. And they it was really close. In the fourth quarter, we broke down, and they just took it to us and took advantage. And it's really cool though when we think about it. At the moment, we weren't really feeling it. We're pretty upset. We were like, oh man, we're so close. But now as you take time and look back, we realized that we were one game away from playing the largest amount of games that we could play, at our level.
Yeah, and everyone was so proud. I think the biggest thing was, and maybe Fall River was the better team last year, but we were with them the whole game.
Yeah.
And so that was the part that hurt the most. But what did you tell the girls after that game? Especially when you've come so far, you've achieved some things, and you're so close to getting to a championship game. What can you say to young players like that?
It's really difficult. To be honest, I don't exactly remember what I say. But I will tell you, this is something that we talk about a lot. At the end of basketball season, no matter where you are, no matter what section you're in, no matter what division you're in, there's only really one team in your section who's going to end the year on a win. There's only one.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. And so for us, I tried to tell them, it was disappointing at the moment. I said, hey, feel the disappointment, it's there. It's a bummer. But it was a little different because I could look in all their eyes and say, hey, let's do it again. We got another year. And so I think for our girls, it's a little different than normal because we weren't losing anything.
For sure.
We weren't losing any pieces. So, they're already talking about hey, let's try to get back. We want another shot at it.
Wow. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your long-term vision, because this didn't just happen by accident.
No.
You've had you've had a schedule when you took over as the head coach, and you laid it out for yourself and for your team in the program that you wanted to have certain milestones at certain years. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so when I came in to be the athletic director, I was on the girls' staff just as an assistant, first year AD, trying to figure everything out. And then it just figured out that, hey, it's time, like, we'll make a little switch here and relieve our coach. Our coach had been coaching for a few years, but he was also our girls' flag ball coach. So it was kind of like double duty for him. So he stayed on as one of our assistants and stuff. But we kind of laid out a plan. So him, me, and then Chris Dunlap, another longtime assistant and also girls head coach for years, still teaches, here. We kind of sat down and we kind of laid out, like, what's the goal? Like, what do we want to build? We had to answer, the first question we had to answer is, are we building a season? Are we building a program? Because there's a big difference in how we view it. A season is, you take one group of girls or guys or whatever, take that team and do as best as you can with that team. And then next year it's like, okay, well, that team's done, move on. Program for us is laying foundations, and it's probably may go a little slower, but lay foundations to keep growing your program. So your program continues to elevate as the years go. And so we decided, like, hey, we want to build a program. At the time right now, under Coach Scott Tedman, our boys are rolling. They have this full program, and it's kind of cool because we go, hey, you can do it. Being a small school, it's possible.
Right.
Like, you can do this. And so we decided to lay out a program. That first year, year was like, I want to say it was 1920. I think 1920 was the first season as a head coach, and then our goal was make playoffs. Well, made the playoffs, but not only did we make the playoffs, we got to the semifinals of the section, which was a huge, we go a year ahead. And then slowly we're building and building and building.
So it's because that was your goal the next year?
That was the goal for year two.
Yeah. Okay.
We just wanted to make the playoffs first year, but then the first year we ended up getting to the semis, and we didn't perform super well there, but we knew hey, we're pretty good. Problem is we had a huge group of seniors. And so we're going to lose a lot.
And I think that the experience matters.
Oh, definitely.
At that level of competition. You talk about, my team back in 2001, 2002, and we did, make the playoffs, won a game, but we really didn't have, that wasn't a part of our program. We didn't know what to expect getting into playoffs, and there's just different atmosphere, different level of competition. And so now that your girls have seen that year after year after year, when they get to those big moments, even though they were young, it seemed like it was just we've been prepared for this for a long time.
That was a big part, because we get there, we get to experience that, and we run into the eventual section winners. They end up beating us, and so it was like, hey, at least we lost to the best at our division in our section. So that was kind of a confidence boost for them. But then that was also, the year prior to that and before, we really picked up our girls' summer program. So
that's what I was going to ask. What were some of the foundations that you were laying?
Our summer program was something we decided to do. So the year before that season, so the summer right before, the 1920 season, we actually go up to Wallow University. They host it's like a team basketball camp. And so we go up there for, I think it was like a week and a half. But we took our team up there and we had a great time, got introduced to new coaching and saw a lot of different styles of playing, got to play a lot of different schools. It was a really good experience for us, but we also found that we did quite well. And so coming back down, our girls are beaming of confidence. Like, hey, we can really do this. And so as we walk into the year, they carry that confidence over and it works. And so then actually COVID hits, of course, and it kind of derails everything, but we're very lucky. Our admin was so supportive that we were actually able to get games during COVID and play and go through all the regulations and everything. So our program didn't take a halt. It didn't stop. It slowed, but it still progressed forward. And that team was a really good team as well. Mr. Dunlap, our assistant coach, Chris, he goes, if we had section playoffs, that team could have done it. And thinking back, possibly. You never really know because it was COVID, but that happened. So the following year, we're still kind of riding that momentum, and we get into the section semis again, and we end up progressing all the way to the section title, where we play Valley Christian, and they take it to us. And part of that is experience, like you said. We get there, first time we've been there, we're very excited. You're in a big arena.
Yeah, like, it's in the Golden One Center where the Sacramento Kings play.
Yeah, very special for our girls, but they were ready and we were not. And we ended up getting beat pretty good too. But we still get the NorCal bid, so we get to experience that. And then we actually advance to the Final Four again. We end up pulling off an upset in Antioch, beating Cornerstone Christian. And then we run into Fall River, and we go to Fall River, and they just let us have it. And they also win the state that year too. Following year after that, we have to hit the reset button. We got a lot of young girls coming in, and we still get to the section semis. But I remember all of us kind of going, that's not quite what we wanted to do. Had another big group of seniors, and we were concerned, like, we're going to lose them. What's this year going to look like? So this last year,
that's what I was thinking.
I mean, we're all
I was not expecting it just because of the youth.
Yeah, but as we're looking at our plan that we laid out, we're like, hey, we already got to a section title, and we did this 2 years faster than we thought we were going to get to. So this upcoming year was the year that we had circled as section title run.
Yeah.
Well, now we've kind of fast-tracked it, mainly due to our players, our girls, and their dedication. Like, they're willing to work to get there and believe that we can do it. And so now we're like a year and a half, 2 years ahead, and now we're actually trying to do something that was on plan, year 7.
Had a little ambulance go through, so cut there. The experience is so helpful for the players.
Yeah.
How have those experiences helped you as a coach to coach those players in those big games?
Oh man, like that's huge. So as a coach, one of the things that, there's a saying in education, and I think it goes for coaching too. Like in education, a lot of the best teachers, they steal from the other best teachers. So as a coach, like, I have no qualms about reaching out to another coach and be like, hey, I really like what you're doing. Can you send me that stuff? And more than, I'd probably say 85% are more than willing to share stuff with you. And so as we're playing...
Because they know it's not theirs.
They know it's not theirs too. They probably took it from someone else.
Yeah.
And so, like, as we're playing and experiencing all these things, having conversations with coaches, and for me, like other athletic directors, on how they're, backing their programs and how the funding's working and all these different things, these all play a part into this moment. And then this last year, winning the section title, one thing for us that was kind of nice is we're playing a league opponent, so we know them really well. But at the same time, it's like we have gained all this experience, all this coaching knowledge, all these different ways to talk to players, to work with players, skills to highlight, pieces to move here and there, when to take your timeouts, when not to use them, different things like that. How to make and talk to your teams in those big moments. Those are all things that experience comes with. And you can either gain it by experiencing it firsthand or try to gather it by talking to as many people as you can to gather that information.
So it sounds like the summer program was very influential. What does your calendar year look like now as a program?
So for our girls program, the CIF, the Sac Joaquin section, just changed our dead periods. So we used to have to go by dead periods where there's times where you just can't meet with your teams. As a small school, though, it's not going to change too much for us because many of our athletes are dual athletes. So as they're in volleyball season, whereas some other schools will be practicing basketball with their team, well, half my team's playing volleyball, and the other half are playing CIF flag football. So I'm not going to take them from those sports to practice. So for us, we'll still operate the same pretty much, but we'll play our season, and I would say each season starts in the summer. So June, graduation date happens, bang, next day, we'll be in the gym. Like, it's the next day. Here in our area, that's when summer leagues are for our schools. So we'll play in summer leagues. Last few years we played in 2 summer leagues each. So we'll play 2 to 3 days a week games against all different sizes of school. It's summer, and the focus for summer for us is development, growth development. But it's also a time for us as a coaching staff to play with stuff. So try different things, try different lineups, try different offenses or different looks, different defenses. For us, it's a lot of tinkering on the defensive end, trying different things to see what we can implement for the next year. Then after that program, July hits, and there's usually a couple weeks where we get to kind of work. So we get to work with our students. So we'll now host a basketball camp for the youth here. This is going to be our 5th year doing it. And our girls and boys varsity boys will be involved in that. So we'll host that, and that will be kind of a week. But then after that, throughout the summer, you have lifts, you got practices, and we're talking, long practices because you got your lifts, things like that. We're not saying all day.
How many times a week do you think?
So we'll lift with our teams 1 to twice a week with attached to practice. We'll probably practice once to twice a week depending on the game schedule then, but we're also asking them to lift and condition outside of practice at least once to twice a week. And luckily a lot of our student athletes are student athletes, so they are also athletes for other sports, and so they're already doing a lot of other physical things, so they're in usually pretty good shape. But we'll be doing that, and then we'll kind of take a break off during August a little bit, and then we'll pick up with conditioning focus and lifting focus in October. We'll go from there, and then we'll hit tryouts at the end of October. This year it's early November, so early November, and then from that moment, tryout, all of our girls know the next 3 weeks leading up to the first game is brutal because we're going to practice 4 to 5 times a week. Just every day, bang, 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 bang. And it gets tiring, but it's really important. And then we have instituted kind of one of those, we'll take a weekend trip with our girls program for kind of team bonding or whatever you want to call it, and we found that to be extremely important for our girls too. So we'll do that. We usually come back from that and they're pretty energized to keep going and keep pushing.
Is that before the season starts?
Definitely before the season starts, and then season will start, right, depending how far you go, season goes, and then once you get eliminated it stops, right? But in between all those times when you're not working with your team individually as an athletic director and as a coach, that's probably the time where I get most of my work done, where I get a lot of my scout done, where I get a lot of my planning and maneuvering, planning my practices ahead of time, thinking what we're going to install, what we're not going to install. So the program is never dormant. There's not a dormant time. So as a coach, for me, I might give myself a week, 2 weeks, probably not super healthy, but a week or 2 weeks after it all to kind of just relax and kind of think back. But then as soon as we start again in the June, it's let's go. Yeah. We're going to push again. So
now that may be a little different from other Adventist Academy basketball programs, or like you said, maybe it's not a program. If there is, maybe it's just showing up for the season. So if there is a coach out there who is saying, you know what, I want to do what Kenny's talking about, but maybe it's a little overwhelming to think about a full calendar year schedule, what would your advice be to a coach who's wanting to institute some of these foundational things? What would you suggest as the first place to start that's the most impactful?
I think the first thing is you have to decide if you're going to be the coach to do this. Are you going to see the program through the first rough steps? Are you willing to go through that? Because a program needs a little bit of consistency too. It's got to happen over time. And so eventually, if you're just going to be there for a season, I would say you can adjust a little bit here. Now you maybe go for the greatest season ever. Go for it. I think it's great. Always attain for high goals. But at the same time, if you want to build a program, you got to make sure you're dedicated. So that means making sure people around you and your support system outside of basketball is okay with you pushing forward. So for me, when we came up with this idea, I remember going to my wife at the time, and still wife. Now we have a kid.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, still my wife. We have a kid and everything, and looking at her and hey, here's the plan. Are you okay with this? And she said yes. Now I don't know if she still feels she hasn't said no, so we're still going. But she said yes, and so I've had that support system at home, knowing that during basketball season, I'm not around as much. And that's going to be difficult on your family unit. So making sure you're strong there.
That's great advice.
Once that happens, you got to make sure your coaching staff and your school is good. So our admin, we had a lot of meetings with our admin, my potential coaching staff at the time, said, here's the vision. Are you in for this long ride? Like, it's going to be bumpy. It's going to be tough. But like, are you in? Because here's the end goal. And if they give you the go, then it's like, all right, now it's time to plan. And so for me, that's how we started. We did those two things, felt comfortable. And then we sat down and said, all right, we got the go, let's draw it out. And so we drew it out, and we had a list of like, I think we made a 7-year list, and we're like, these are the 7-year goals. And every year had a different goal, and then we had sub goals, between them and things like that. But that was the focus: get to there, and then if we can speed it up.
Yeah,
but like finding that ability to have that support, I think that's the first step if you want to do it. Like, make sure you're all in and that everyone around you is all in as well.
Great advice. What would you say of the calendar activities that you have added is the most impactful if someone is out there and just like, I don't think I can add a whole year's worth of stuff, but like I could maybe do something here or there? What would you suggest as like an easiest?
Man, I think that's tough. I think one thing though is definitely for us that made a big impact was instituting a summer program, kind of really going for that summer program, even if it's just a month where you're playing and you're practicing and you have that FaceTime with your athletes and you're working with them. That's really important, because then as the season rolls around, you have some familiarity. You're not starting at ground zero.
It wasn't back in February the last time that they
Correct.
together.
Yeah, so they at least have that experience together. And then, we've had a kind of developed a culture here where our girls now look forward to summer practices and summer basketball. And it's kind of something special, to be called up to play from what was now our new incoming 9th graders. We're hoping to start a girls JV. So hopefully pull up our girls JV and we'll start that as well. But that's the next step.
How important are the middle school teams in the big picture? Was that something that was already going when you came to SA as a coach? And if it was, how important is that though as kids develop?
I think it's super important, because especially at all levels, like the earlier you get some experience to stuff, it's better for you, right? Now you can get over experience. That's a whole different conversation. But being able to play for your school and have that pride, that's kind of built in, that's really important. But I think there is a difference between having a middle school program and then actually being involved with your middle school program. And so for us, I know on the girls' side, we try to take a really concentrated approach where, I ask my varsity girls to be at middle school girls' games as much as they can, work the table, talk to them when they see them on campus. So we're blessed, we have a campus here that's K-12, so we'll see them walking around and talking to them, personally invite those players and families to the varsity girls' games, reach out to them, have a lot of conversations with their coaches. Me as a head coach, now I'm also the athletic director, so it's kind of like a natural path, but having conversations with that coaching staff, show up to a practice or two and hang out with them and work with them, but be present in that program so that middle school group now has something like, hey, I'm looking forward to that. That's what we want. That's the idea. And so it's pretty special, like seeing our girls, our current seniors, they were middle schoolers when we started this process. And so it's kind of special because a couple of them have mentioned like, hey, I remember, your senior girls coming down and hanging out with us and talking to us and watching us during games, and me thinking, then coming to your games going, oh, I can't wait to be there. And so I think it's really important, but you can't just have the program. You got to be involved with it to help your program develop.
Now, how do you recruit such great middle school coaches? Is it are you paying them a lot during the school year, or is that just, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm just asking.
I wish I could pay our coaches. The one thing
I coach the middle school boys.
Well, I was gonna say our middle school boys coach is probably the most needy.
There's
kind of really wants a lot from it. No, our middle school coaches. So here at SA, we wish we could pay all of our coaches, but they are on volunteer. They are on volunteer. I truly say that, but it's true. I really do wish we could give you guys all stipends, but unfortunately, due to constraints of where our budget's at, we don't have that. So
Do you know, what is the consensus of most of our academies in general? Are our coaches almost always all volunteer, or
here
is
in
it
the
stipend?
Northern California area, like
Not a lot are getting
stipends, and if they are, I'm hearing pretty small,
Yeah.
numbers for the amount of hours they're working.
Yeah, I'd be curious, like, how many do. Obviously, like, no one coaches high school or middle school sports for the money. It's nice if there's something, but
Correct,
I would guess most don't have some sort of stipend.
I think for the things that we look for, though, in our coaches, kind of going back to your question, is do those coaches possess, first off, the willingness to kind of get along with your program? So the willingness to institute what you want done, what you are trying to teach, and most importantly, does their vision align with yours in values, what's important? So for our girls program, like, we're big on accountability and we're big on preparation. So one of the things is, like, at the middle school level, we're talking about accountability. That means showing up on time. That's coming prepared to practice. Don't just show up when practice starts. Like, you need to walk in, have your shoes on, be warm. So when that buzzer goes off, you're on the court ready to go. We don't want to spend 15, 20 minutes getting you warm. So we'll come to the middle, we'll talk for a minute, and then we'll go. Like, that's one of the biggest things our girls program wants to institute.
I don't think people realize how big of a tone setter that specific detail is.
Yeah.
And that really bugs me if anyone is late to a practice, because if you allow that to happen, then it sounds like it's a really small, insignificant thing, but being late, and it just perpetuates this, like, mindset of, like, I'm not here to work, I'm just here kind of on this really casual basis.
Right, yeah.
No, like, when we step in the gym, we're here to work, and that doesn't just mean during practices or individual sessions or weightlifting. It means games too. Like, you can't just turn that on. That has to be a mindset that happens when you first step in the gym for anything.
Right, and sometimes we'll have girls who have appointments or tutoring or whatever. That's fine. Like, academics, all that comes first. But if the girl walks in late and that athlete is not running to the locker room to change, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is your time. Like, let's get it going. So we would really like to put that into our middle school program so it leans into our high school program. The other thing we would like to do is talk about preparation. So for us, scouting is really important to what we feel is a big component to our success in the past few years. Is we feel we've always been better prepared than a lot of the teams we've been playing. Like, we kind of know what's going to happen. At least we know their players, their favorite sets, the defenses they're going to throw at us, when coaches are going to get ready to call timeouts, what's going to force this call or that call. And, there are moments where I remember our girls this year, they'd call a play and our girls shift because they know exactly what's going to happen. And that's so important. And so being prepared in that way, but preparation is not just strategic. That's also physical. Like, are you eating right? Are you sleeping well? Are you taking care of your body throughout the day to perform at its best level? And so at the middle school level, it's a little different. We're introducing and talking. It's not as, I would say hardcore as, like, enforcement. And then the high school level, it's kind of more of an expectation. Like, I expect you to do that. Like, we expect you to be I should not have to remind you at this point to do it. And so those are the big things, though. Like, looking at a middle school coach and a middle school program, if you want it to feed into the high school program, especially with a lot of Adventist academies don't have a JV girls. So a lot of them are moving from your 8th graders, they're moving into varsity. And sometimes you need them. And some academies, like in other states, they have rules where the 8th graders are playing on the varsity. Mm-hmm. There's a big difference between, a 12 and 13-year-old kid and a 17 and 18-year-old kid. Mm-hmm. And so they have to be prepared in my vision is, like, be prepared to take that step. And so that's one of the biggest things when it comes to coaches is that dedication, but also coaches who are willing to be kind of with your vision, let alone enforce and push and teach the attributes and virtues that you
values,
want.
Yeah. I want to talk about Victoria Fowler.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Senior this year. Just describe her as a player and a person and what she's meant to this team.
Well, Victoria is one of those players who watched us play at the middle school level. And she was actually a soccer player growing up all the way through. Her brother played basketball here, a good player for us as well. And then something clicked Victoria-wise, and she said, I want to play basketball. And so she kind of switched gears and has really dove into basketball and really taken a big step every year. So her first year, freshman year, she came in. She was on the team that lost in the section title. So she was a freshman, didn't get a lot of minutes, but she's got some natural size, some natural athleticism. But she's a freshman coming in. She's not we're pretty senior heavy that year, so there just wasn't a lot of time. But it didn't deter her. She continued to work. And then the following year, she started the year actually coming off our bench, but then slowly and surely, like halfway through the year, became one of the first people we put on that starting lineup because she dedicated herself to a hole in our team. Like, we needed a defensive stopper. And all of a sudden, Victoria said, yeah, I'll do it. Like, not a glamorous job at all. Let's be honest, right? It's not glamorous. But she's like, I'll do it. And she becomes this integral part her sophomore year. So then, losing more seniors, like we mentioned, we're all worried. She really gets into the gym, and not just our gym, but finds personal trainers, plays outside basketball. It like lives, breathes, and eats it. Like, this is Victoria. And so she gets there junior year, and it's a different player.
It's a market difference.
It's a different player. I would say one of the biggest differences is not just the skill she worked on, but how she worked on her conditioning, her strength, her athleticism. That's a lot of hard work. That's not fun at all. And doing all that stuff really took her to the next level. Basketball-wise, that's what makes her special. But what makes her super special is who she is as a person. She's a really good leader. She's welcoming. She's always got a smile. I mean, you watch her play. She's always smiling. It can be like a terrible time, and she's smiling, right? Like, it's one of those things where she finds joy in that game. And it's so special because it's infectious. It goes out. And so one of the things that makes her special for our program is not just her skill and her willing to do anything to win. She doesn't care. Like, as long as we win, that's what's important to her. But it's the attitude, the accountability, the leadership that she brings that has really elevated her in our program and made her indispensable. Like, we need her.
Well, she can handle the ball, left hand, right hand.
Oh,
she can shoot the three. Good passer, great defensive player, as you mentioned. Oh, by the way, she's what? How tall is she? 6'1", 6'2". I can't remember how tall she is.
She hears it. She might, if I get it wrong, she'll be. I'd give her at least 5'10". But, shoes, bump her up
close
a couple
to 6
inches. Yeah.
Okay, so she has been playing AAU, and I think that's been pretty important to her development. What value do you place as a high school coach on AAU as an idea?
Yeah. So AAU as an idea, I have a love-hate relationship with AAU. Like,
clearly it's helped.
Clearly it does help.
Yeah.
Like, I have a love-hate relationship with it. So the thing that I really like about it is different coaches. You get different voices. I think it's important for your players to hear other voices too. Development of different skills, different styles, experience different playing with different players. And usually at the AAU level, if you're playing at a high level, you're playing really good teams and players like throughout. So it's really important to get that competition aspect. And you're playing during the off season, which is always good. You're in the gym, you're working. Where I struggle with AAU sometimes is I'm not necessarily a big fan of playing 4 or 5 games in a 48-hour period. That's just not, I'm not a big fan of it, especially if you want to play at a high level. I think, teaching our athletes to take care of their bodies is really important too, and that requires rest. And rest can be active rest, but it still needs to be some type of rest. So for me, the travel of AAU makes it kind of tough, especially at the higher level. The cost makes it almost impossible for some families. And so I like that they're playing, they're getting all this experience. I wish it was tweaked a little bit. That's in the perfect world. I don't run AAU. I don't want to run AAU. I have no desire to do that. But overall, it has helped our players. And, one thing it's really helped us with, I've noticed in our girls who do play AAU, so not just Victoria, but we have 3 or 4 other girls who actively are playing as well, is kind of the aggressive mindset, the attack, the physicality of it, the speed. that has really helped them and benefited them as we move forward.
As your program has continued to get better and better, you're starting to get invites to different national tournaments. This next year, you're going to be participating in a big one. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so this last year we kind of had we've been playing in the West Coast Jamboree, which is in the Bay Area during Christmas for 2 or 3 years, and they've been great because they've been able to accommodate our Sabbath, which was really awesome. Unfortunately, this upcoming year, just the way the calendar lies, 2 big game days for them are Friday nights and Saturday, and it's hard to move 2 games around. And so West Coast is not an option for us this year. And so we're looking for a tournament, and we ended up getting invited to the SoCal Swish in Anaheim. This is a tournament that, it'll be our first time going, but it's a tournament that there's been a lot of really good schools playing in it, schools from around the country. I think last year, the Anaheim division, I could be wrong, but I think a team from like Kentucky won it or something like that. So we're going to get to see schools from out of the state, which is fantastic. And it's going to be during Christmas break for us, so it fits really well within our season and timing for us to play those tournaments before league, where league season gets kind of busy. But really special. We're really excited for it. And, going to these big tournaments, like, we're very aware we could lose all 3. We could win all 3. Like, we don't know how it's going to happen. But one thing that we also talk about a lot in our program, it's not like whether you win or lose, it's how. How are you winning? How are you losing? And like, if you talk to our girls, they'll tell you there are times where, as a coaching staff, we're more upset after a win than we are after a loss because of either conduct or body language or effort or execution. So it's really about how we play. So we're really looking forward to it. This is going to be a great experience, and we're excited for it.
How important is it for you as a program, if you're building a program, in the scheduling of games that may be out of reach for wins, if that makes sense? Like, scheduling really difficult opponents that you may not win. You might get blown out. How does that actually help? Because some people would say, "Why are we playing it? Why are we playing this game? Like, we're getting blown out by 40. Like, why would we even schedule this?"
I think there's a fine balance, and it depends on your program, your school, and a lot too, your program's parents. Like, that's a big part too. That it's totally separate of just your program, because your parents, they're the ones who are driving their athletes home. So when they're talking and they're just having conversations, what they're saying, your athlete's hearing it. And so you have to make sure your parents are on board of like what we're gonna do, where we're going, and what we're trying to achieve. So we've had a great set of parents here the last few years, throughout this time. So it's never been a problem. But for us, like, we'll tell them like, hey, we're taking on this big school. This is gonna be a challenge. Our girls love that opportunity. Like, we've gotten to the point where it's not like, ooh, big school, like, what are we doing? No, it's like, oh yeah, let's knock them off. Like, let's see what we can do. But I think it's really important for them to see and experience a bigger school atmosphere. One of the things I love doing is actually going and playing those bigger schools at their gym. It's really getting that away game experience. That's really fun. There are games too where, like, you got to be careful with your opponents. I will play most anybody if it fits into the schedule. We're not too scared of that. Like, we'll say, yeah, sure, let's go. But there's also a time where we try to avoid lining up 5 or 6 teams in a row who are going to beat you by 40, who are going to beat you by 50. Because there is a point where you got to make sure these are high school athletes. So we have to make sure that there is some confidence building too and talk. But a lot of it's about, as a coach and as a program, instilling in them like what we're trying to achieve, what we're doing. You got to look bigger picture than this one game.
That's a great point about the parents too. And I don't know how many academies do this, where normally you guys have a meeting before the season starts.
Yes, definitely. No, like, definitely. We do. It's like a requirement. Like, you got to be at this meeting. And in that meeting, luckily now parents kind of know what's happening. But before, early on, it was really important. And we have a conduct contract that's signed, and it's assigned with our players and our parents. Like, it's both signed, and we don't let our players touch the practice floor until it's signed and submitted. And it lays out our expectations. It lays out what we expect, what we don't expect, and we've had to use those contracts a couple times. Be like, hey, you signed this. This is what you agreed to. So we're going to hold you accountable to it. and that's really important. But the parent support is super important, and parents always want, what's the best for their kid. They want what's best, and so it's important. You can have tough conversations, but as an athletic director and as a coach, like those are the conversations that if you could preemptively have them, it's much better for you when that situation arises.
Speaking of conduct, I want to talk to you about your conduct during games. When I came out of college, of course, at the college game, it's pretty normal to ride the officials because you can potentially affect the outcome.
Yeah.
And when I started coaching in high school, I had the same mentality. One thing that I've loved about you is that you never complain. You might mutter under your breath, but you don't let your players see it. You don't let it really show. And I kind of realized over time that as a high school or middle school coach, complaining, first of all, never changes the call, of course. No. And it, more importantly, it really can have a really big negative effect on your players.
Yeah, so early on, I think I was a little more like you. I was a little more vocal. I wouldn't say I was necessarily a vocal complainer. I was much more body language complainer. A couple stare downs, things like that. Had a couple warnings early on in my career for things, just saying stuff. I do have a technical to my name. I definitely do. So I don't want to let everyone know, I do have a technical. Now that technical may be I forgot to put a wrong number in the book.
Oh, that doesn't really count.
It's still a technical. Okay, got it. So something I should be proud of, but I do have it. But overall, I have found that complaining to a ref doesn't really help you. It really doesn't. And then I've noticed that affect my players. So if I'm complaining to the ref, my players hear it, and now they start body language, eyes,
it takes
everything,
them out of the game.
Because now they're so focused on the call, or they're focused on that ref, or that ref doesn't like us, or blah, 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 blah. That's something that we shouldn't do. And so there have been times where halftime, I'll come in to the locker room, I'll tell them, hey, referees, that's my fault. I have showed you guys, don't worry about them. I'm going to do better. Let's do better. And we need to be better at this.
If you do have players that are complaining a lot, one of the funnest things I've done with teams is you're scrimmaging and you just call bogus calls throughout the whole thing.
It's the best.
And if you do that, and maybe there's a not punishment, maybe there's a consequence for them reacting, maybe there's not. But regardless, however you set it up, it's just a great way to train them to play through anything. If you're getting fouled, hey, you're not going to get that foul call a lot of times in a game even. The official just may not see it. Now, I will say that it's not like you don't talk to officials to try to get them to see something.
Correct, yes. Yeah. So that's kind of what I've really been putting a lot of focus as a coach and doing. It's a lot of more questions. So if there's a call I disagree with, more than likely I will go up to the referee and say, hey, can you explain to me what you saw? Or why. I try to sometimes interpret what they're seeing and say, hey, just want to confirm, is this what you're seeing? And sometimes it's a terrible call. In my view, it's a bad call. And my players look at me, I'll go, oh no, that's the right call. That's the right call, or whatever, just to make sure the referee knows that I'm not out after them.
Sure.
It's not us versus them. They're just part of the game.
Right.
It's not us against them. It's us versus the other team. They just happen to be a part of it. Now, can they affect the game? Definitely. More, definitely. But we're also at the point where I try to tell our girls, make sure the game's to a point where the ref doesn't matter.
Yeah, and how often does an official really determine the outcome of the game?
Take care of your business.
Yeah.
If there's a team that you should be beating, make sure you take care of your business and don't let it come down to where a ref can affect that.
Absolutely. Okay. Coach, we could continue going for a long time,
forever.
But I'm going to cut us off here. I just have one last question for you, and that would just be, you have really built quite an amazing program, if I do say so myself, here at Sacramento Adventist Academy. You are not an old man by any point, by any view, but you have built something, and so I consider you an expert on what resources do you use that you would suggest for coaches that are up and coming? Maybe they're not young, maybe they just have recently started coaching, that have helped you in your coaching journey?
So in my coaching journey, first thing, it's not really a resource, but it is at the same time. It's finding people that will hold you accountable too. So I have a couple friends who I've known for a long time that I'll talk to a lot regarding coaching, and they'll come to games and they'll watch, and sometimes they'll just watch how I conduct myself on the sideline. Or they'll talk to me about, like, what are you thinking here? You know, these different aspects, and then taking that as a coach and being very realistic with yourself and looking at things to fix. So that's been huge for me. But additionally, it's gathering information from everywhere and being open to information and ideas and thoughts and other coaches. You know, one thing that we've started now is reaching out to local college coaches who coach at a higher level, and just asking, can I come watch your practice? And literally just go and watch their practice. And you might not even get to talk to them. You know, introduce yourself, probably be good, but like sitting there and watching their practice, or going to big high schools and saying, hey, can I watch your practice, right? And just see how they operate, bounce ideas off of them, build friendships and talk to them. And that has helped me a long way, because there's more than perspectives. And when your perspective is more rounded, I feel you're better and you're stronger as a coach itself.
Well, Coach, we're looking forward to this next season. It's going to be an exciting one. Yes. I'm sure that we will be able to cover a couple games here for this team this year in 24-25. So best of luck, and thank you so much for being on the Adventist Hoops podcast.
Of course, Dustin, thank you so much. You guys have been doing great work, so keep it up. We're looking forward to it, and you know, we'll see what your middle school boys do this year. Yeah, so we'll go.
Yeah, that'll be fun to see.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Justin.